It's supposed to be you and Fred, and then the little one decided he's not napping at 1 o'clock anymore, huh?
Yeah. He just does his own thing.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
epic. So
Yeah.
let's record because we can do as many of these as I want, and let's talk about being parents, and when Fred can come jump in, he can. Cool.
Really? Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so new-ish mama, 8 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, little background on us. Known you since what, 6th-ish grade?
I think so.
Something like that. You know, the hilarious story. I was looking through old pictures that I found, and I found pictures of us. I think there was something with a fire truck, and we just like weren't interested, so we went to like the back of the fire truck, and we're just like trying on their clothes and stuff. And I was like, this is pretty standard.
We were fire models.
Yeah.
Forgot all about that. That's really funny.
Yeah. Look where we're at now.
Right?
We did it.
Awesome.
Hey, Fred.
What's up?
Nice to meet you for the first time.
Absolutely.
Will you scooch that way a little? Towards her. There you go. Get real friendly, like you guys made a baby once.
Easy brother.
I'm in my
giant rocking chair in here.
I love it. All right, so we're recording now. We just jumped right into it because that was a good example of the what it's like to be a parent when everything goes awry. All right, Fred, tell me a little bit about you, what you do, and we'll intro that because I think it's super awesome and important. And the little one's going to get quite a life with you two as their parents. So let's talk about the challenges that are going to come with that.
Yeah, so I've basically been doing music for I played since I was 21 years old. I'm 33 now, but I started doing it professionally about 8 years ago, where I just like kind of dropped everything I was doing and just only did music and started kind of playing gigs nonstop. But prior to that, I had like got my cosmetology license and I'd cut hair for a couple years. And then I owned a food truck for about 5 years and kind of worked that. And as music was growing and things were building, I kind of just was like, man, music feels like home. You know, I'd worked a lot of different jobs over the years, like leading up to like 20 years old, where I'd got my cosmetology license and nothing ever really felt like home like music. So for the last, I'd say 8 years, I have solely relied on music for an income. I think once or twice I worked in a bar for about 6 months, helped open like 2 bigger bars, and I was like, nah, it's just can't do it. Killed all the fun for me.
Yeah.
And but since then, man, over like the last 4 or 5 years, things have really taken off. Kind of hit that spot where you become financially stable. I don't know if that's just coming into your late 20s or early 30s, or maybe just got some talent in my pocket here with the music, but
I think you're doing all right.
Yeah, I'm trying. But yeah, I basically play music full time, and that looks like a lot of things, man. It's all over the place. It's it's week to week. When we're here in Charlotte, I feel very blessed. We live in a very growing city, and there's so many spots that offer live music. And since I've been here playing for 10 plus years, it's easy to just have a good reputation. And like when a new place opens, or the better gigs are always calling and asking me. I'm not having to do a ton of research to get out there in the city and find the new places. They're kind of finding me, so that's really nice. Like I said, when I say I do music full time, there's so much that goes into it, and a lot of that is like playing shows. The other side of that is a lot of like content creating and emails, a lot of emails, a lot of stuff like that. But I kind of split like that. I guess the brunt of the work would be traveling and playing shows, or just going out for 3 to 4 hours a night here when I'm in town and off tour and playing shows. That's kind of like the clock in hours, I guess, if you will. Everything else is kind of behind the scenes, and it's like a 24/7 kind of thing, like the emails, all the content stuff. You're just constantly working around the clock for that kind of stuff because, as it comes, you just pull it in.
I think it's interesting because that's when you own your own business and you're an entrepreneur, and like in essence, that's what you're doing, and you're the brand. Like there are no off days, there are no off minutes. And so navigating that, I'm interested though. I'm interested. We're going to get there later, but I'm interested in how you navigate that as a couple, and now how you navigate that adding a child to the mix who needs constant attention, and I don't know if your family lives in Charlotte, but I know Kasey's doesn't. So it's not, you can't just call grandma and be like, hey, need you to hang out for 8 hours, so that let's talk about that. Like how has everything then shifted, I guess, for you? Because when it's just the two of you, a wife understands like, hey, I'm grinding now because I'm building an empire, and, it makes it a lot easier. But now add a dependent child that you don't want to miss the formative years.
It changes everything, really, and I guess, forever I've wanted to be a dad. Like that's a dream. That's a dream come true, really. For a long time I've wanted that, and I'd always like pictured what that looked like. But it's totally not necessarily culture shock, but like it's this huge shock and period. Like it changes everything, because I know not to say that I'm selfish, but for years, I mean, like I would just be like, hey, I'm doing this show. Like there's never really any asking if I could do it, because Kasey just,
hey, I'm going to California for a month working on weed farms.
Yeah. Well, I mean, since we met, like that's just always how I've been. Like I've always just lived the life that I wanted to live. And I've been very fortunate to have Kasey like just step right in and go with the flow and have fun with that. But it's kind of like I said, in a way, I had spoiled myself to have the free time. Like, during COVID, I was out playing golf like 3 or 4 days a week, like, and up until last year, I was playing golf all the time because I also love to play golf, and I play some competitive tournaments and stuff. And I'm on this tour here in North Carolina, and I just, it was so easy just to pick up and go do whatever you want, anytime.
Yes.
And that has been the change. And last year I said, I want to set a goal for next year. I want to only play tournament golf. And I've done really well with that. I think this year I've probably played 10 total rounds, and we're halfway through the year. Last year I'd probably played 50 total rounds. So, like working towards goals and stuff like that. But it's totally changed because it's, again, Kasey's parents don't live here in town, nor does really any of Kasey's family here. And my family is here, but my father passed away last year in August or September. And, he was kind of that equal part to my grandparents, or my parents, which are V's grandparents. And my mom does a great job, like when we call upon her and ask. But I guess it took a minute to get in the habit of asking. Like, I would ask the day before because I was like, oh, we need somebody to keep me tomorrow. I got a show at 2 p.m. Kasey doesn't get out till 3. And, just planning ahead. You have to be so far ahead. And I know my mom was like so eager to help when Kasey was pregnant. She was so eager to help. And she's like, I know Kasey's mom doesn't live here, but, just let her know, like, I can be her mom here if she needs. And I was like, well, you're not her mom, you're gonna be my kid's grandmother. And like we had that conversation early on with my mom about separating, like graduating from being a mom to a grandmother, because we'd heard some mutual friends of ours talk about how they felt sometimes the grandparents kind of overstep in and try to just be like, well, this is how I did it with you, or this is how I would do it. And it's like, well, you're the grandmother now, or grandfather, not the mom or dad. And so one thing we told my mom from the start was like, there's not going to be a lot that you're offering, like that you keep offering that we really need. It's the stuff that we ask for is what we need you. And if you want to help, then be there in those moments. And she's done a great job of that, man.
She's foxy.
She's foxy. That's what she made a joke about, like, she didn't want to be called grandma and went with Foxy.
That's a fitting.
Foxy forever.
Yeah. And then she was like, I don't know if I want to go with that.
It's a done deal.
Got her.
It's a fitting mother-in-law for Kasey, I think. That's Foxy.
Oh, yeah.
My dad's name is Ramrod, Pappy Ramrod, and that Kasey will know these people. So do you remember back when Super Troopers came out, the movie, right? And it was like Car Ramrod.
I'm in your house.
You were there? Yeah. So my dad's like, we're from the country and we have bonfires and everybody just gets drunk, right? So it's super late. I don't know what was going on, but Caleb, my best friend, was standing in the kitchen. He said something about Ramrod, and my dad comes in all drunk and he grabs his dick and he goes, I'll show you a ramrod. And so from then on out, he was a ramrod. And so when Sloan was born, I was like, this is sticking. And so I said to him, I was like, hey, just so you know, you're going to be Pappy Ramrod. He's like, no, let's not do that. I was like, what's done is done.
Yep, sorry. You got to see yourself.
Yeah, I mean, really,
You asked for it.
they set themselves up.
Oh, it was awesome. It makes me so happy you were there that day. I forgot all about that. It was so funny.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right, I think there's a lot to unpack in everything you just said, because I think that that's something a lot of people do not do. And I think our generation is starting to do more now, is set the boundaries between the grandparents and the children. Like, what kind of a relationship did you have, or do you have, with your mom? And did you receive that well? Because there's a lot of people that take that personally. And it's like, oh my God. And I know some personal friends too, who are like, we just don't even go be around our grandparents because we don't want their influence on our children and this and that. And, you know.
And so, like, again, we saw that. We saw a lot of that stuff. And so my relationship with my parents is incredible. Like, I love my parents. I love my dad to death. And that's what I was saying. Like, he was the equal part to the grandparents being here, because basically when my mom's busy, my dad would be free, and when my dad was busy, my mom would be free. That was like my whole childhood. Once I think my youngest brother got to 5, my mom was working part-time, and then my dad was full-time, and like they would basically just take us on and off. And you know, when he passed back in September, it was like, you know, that was tough, obviously, to unpack all that. But then, like, moving to now, it's like, you know, that he would be a huge help. He would be here around him so much. And so, like I said, the way I was raised with them was just kind of like, my dad was always very real, but very in control of his emotions. Like, you never really saw him fly off the handle mad or upset. I think I saw him cry one time when my sister got married. And he just always was very in control, but very real about things. And that's just kind of always how I've been with my parents. It's just be pretty real. I mean, I guess after I got out of high school, I mean, I obviously used to lie to them about some stuff, you know. Like,
we all go through that phase.
Church, you know, but you know, I'm just very real with them. And so my sister is, she like graduated from App State University with like a early childhood development degree or something along those lines. And through that, she's like enlightened us on a ton of like parenting tips and things that, like, studies and all kinds of trends that are going on now that maybe our parents didn't do. And I know every time she would bring up the conversation with my mom would be a little offended. She's like, well, I didn't know that, or like, y'all turned out fine. And we're like, totally, nobody's pointing fingers, right. But it's sometimes they like tend to just take that on their chest so heavy, like, oh, what are you calling me out for? It's like, we're not. We're just saying, like, we're creatures of evolution, and we're trying to evolve, you know, and we've done that for thousands and thousands of years. And so, like, it is our job as parents to continue that evolution and, like, do a better job with our kid if we can, you know.
And I think that's what we all want. Like, I mean, it's the whole, you want your child to be better than you. They wanted us to be better than you. That includes parenting. That's how we learn.
It's the only way we keep evolving. It's the only way we keep moving forward. And it's you know, it's such a sensitive subject, you know. And so anyways, having those conversations with my mom, you know, I was very clear once, and then the next time I had to be extra clear and address that. It's like, hey, graduate, mom, from mom to grandma. You are my mama, but you're his grandma. And we laugh because, like, again, we've heard the stories from our friends that have had kids. And I think just the other night my mom came over, and I don't think we had gave V water yet or something, and she was like, oh, I gave him some water, you know. Or like, she was like, you know, I think you should be feeding him solid foods 3 times a day by now. And I'm like, well, we're doing 2 times a day. So, and we always just laugh. And I just laugh at her because I'm like, hey, mom, be the grandma, be the grandma, you know. And I just give her a lot of shit. But she's awesome, and she's a huge help. Along with my sister. My sister is like full-time. She works as kind of like a nanny / doula / like, she serves like a kind of birthing community around here in Charlotte. And she does that full time, and she comes and helps a lot with V too, which is huge. And not everybody has that. You know, we're very fortunate to have that kind of thing. And geez, if Kasey's parents lived here, we'd basically have a built-in babysitter all the time. But
it's probably that she's not
yeah,
coming. I mean, she's been here like 4 times already.
Yeah,
she's coming again in September.
Yeah, but that's awesome. I mean, you want the family connection like that. Like if you could do everything you were doing right now in a little commune with all of them, you would.
Yeah, totally.
It's the plan.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of people's solutions, you know, is like, it takes a community to raise a kid. Like, you keep hearing that over and over again, but yet we're continuously reaching further from that ideology. And I tell people this, it's like, you know, we live in our little neighborhood here in our cul-de-sac, and man, we've maybe said, I don't know, God, we probably had like 2 hours worth of conversations over the 5 years we've lived here with these people who live here.
One was an argument.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's weird that, you know, it's not that we have any beef with our neighbors. It's just, you don't really want to associate with them that much. Whereas like just a short 20 years ago, it's like every second Friday, the neighborhood's getting up and doing a cookout, or, you know, like you're always hanging with your neighbors. You are more part of a community. And then track it back another 200 years, it's like villages of people are working together to survive, not just to monetarily thrive, which is, you know, what we're doing now. It's all about monetization, all about making the money. It's all about this dollar amount rather than, I guess, the reality of like the healthy benefits that a community brings to raising children. And also just like, I mean, we're kids ourselves. Like at 35 years old, we're still just a bunch of big kids. You know, we're continuously growing, and as you come into your 30s and 40s, your mind is just sharpening into its like best prime, you know, the prime of your life. And so it's good for everybody, not just your children. You know, it's good for you too. Living in a community changes things. But I think we've gotten really far away from that. Like I said, we don't associate with our neighbors, and that's 9/10 of people. Like, they just kind of like, it's like a, hey, how you doing? That's it. There's no real community to where you live and where you hang out. Whereas, like I said before, like, you're facing thousands and thousands of years of primordial instinct to live in a village and live with people who you know,
I mean, connection's everything.
Yeah.
And I think that what I've realized a lot with like the raising of the tribe, it goes to like also relationships. Like, you can't, it's unfair, which I found all these things out, like obviously the hard way, but it's unfair to make your partner the source of all of your happiness, all of your needs, all of your wants. Like, one person to provide all of those things it's unattainable while that person's still trying to be an independent person. And I think in relationships, we put that pressure on the other person because it's like, oh my goodness, well, if you're not happy, I'm not happy. And then the whole thing's a mess instead of finding like your own source of happiness. But I think that then extrapolates out into children and how we raise children. And very much like the community thing is, how are we raising them together? What are we doing together? How are they interacting with other human beings? Like all of that kind of stuff, and having other support systems in place of people. So like, I know you guys are going to homeschool, so let's talk about that. But Sloan, our option down here was the Waldorf school, which in my opinion is the next best thing to homeschooling. It's unbelievable. And so she'll have a teacher that's going to go with her from first grade when she starts this year all the way through. And the same teacher goes to second grade and third grade and fourth grade. So the teacher has this like group of like 16 kids that goes through the entire time. And I'm like, man, you know, you remember Mr. Luis. I'm still good friends with Mr. Luis, right? Like, I mean, he was one of my coaches. It was awesome. There were times that like he helped me through some stuff after school. Like, I built a relationship of things that like I didn't feel comfortable going to my dad to talk about, or I didn't feel comfortable going to my parents to talk about. But it was like another person who was an authority in my life that I trusted was built in essence in that tribe. Like, and we developed in that tribe, going to school with the same kids since, I mean, I went to kindergarten with Corey and Hank. Kindergarten. I still talk to almost every week.
Just came and visited me.
Who?
Melanie just came and visited me like a couple weeks ago.
Right. I mean, like, and I kept asking, how am I going to give this to Sloan? How am I going to give this to Sloan? Because down here, it's like everyone goes to the next school. It's the next whatever, $60,000 a year, all this stuff. And then I found this school and I was like, this is the one. Like, this is where she builds those lifelong friendships with those people that she goes through all the shit with. and then she builds her own tribe.
Totally.
You know, so I think
Yeah,
that it plays
not
into
right.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that is, I mean, like I grew up with a group of guys that are like, you know, we still take the guys trip and we all stay in touch, and like we all kind of have had kids at the same time, and everybody's kind of coming to that head of like, what are we going to do? And there's always this talk of like, let's buy some land and just all live there and blah, 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 you know, but it's a lot of talk. Like cause that's a heavy commitment to just say,
Huge.
you know what, guys, we're going to do this. And, but it is like, again, you see it nowadays more than ever. Like, how are these kids supposed to build that kind of community? I mean, you could, all 5 of your kids' friends could live in the same, whatever, 10, 20-mile radius. And as these cities are growing so fast, you know, you don't have to move or anything. And just all of a sudden you're rezoned into a new school that got built to just handle the demand of the growth. And I know that kind of happened to us as kids. We lived in this place called Mount Pleasant our whole life, and never moved, never changed. And a new school got built, just like kind of up in an area called Concord. And when they rezoned, it came like we were the edge, and they wanted us to all go to Concord, this other school. And my dad just bought a house in Mount Pleasant so we could use that address. And that didn't really work, right? These people were getting so mad that we were using that address, you know. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, my dad, he's sacrificing so much. Like, we weren't rich or anything, you know. He's a hardworking dude, and he's paying for this house so that we can go to this school, which we went to for, you know, 5 to 10 years, depending on which kid it was. And so we started sleeping down there 4 to 5 nights out of the week, you know, on air mattresses and cots. And these people were having people come investigate us just over a silly thing. And it's like,
just because you want a better life for your kids. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. We had built relationships and we knew the community from Mount Pleasant because that's where we were from. So to change schools, it was just weird. But like, that's happening now. And it's like, or whether, you know, again, the same thing with gentrification of cities. You know, people get priced out or they get forced to sell because of the monetary value they're going to make. And it seems to come down to, no matter what age your kid is, they're kind of like the last to be asked about that. You know, you're just kind of like, honey, we got to do this for the family. And then you know, it's like, well, what about the kid's choice? You know, maybe he liked the school, or maybe he needed to be there, and maybe he's got, you know, 4 or 5 friends that he's really close with. And I think that's big, man. Building friendship is it's everything, because like, you know, but I don't really know what I would do without my friends. And some of my friends, I don't know what they would have done without me. You know, we've helped each other a ton throughout these last 20 years of like sharing that relationship. So
it's interesting too. I think, and Kasey, I want to chime in on this because this is definitely going to be a woman's perspective on it. But I saw a meme the other day, or someone sent it to me, and it was like, you know, my husband made 5 friends in first grade and hasn't made another one since. And it was like, yeah, that's pretty much that's pretty much how it goes. But I find that as a man, it's so much easier to keep those relationships because there's none of the there's like no drama ever with guys. And if there is, it's like over in like 30 seconds. So I find that there's a lot of women out there that I've seen and observed. And like one of the red flags that, like, if you read John Gottman's work, like the guy who wrote The Love Lab, is one of the biggest red flags a woman can have is having no women friends, because she doesn't know how to socialize the right way. And so how do you, how do you then keep those relationships like that though? I mean, do you think it's part of like what I was talking about with Sloan, where it's like, it's just because you were fucking together for so long, almost like guys, it's like once you find a friend, you're always with them. So you force yourself, or like the military, you go through basic training. Well, like you're bonded, you know, and there was nowhere else for us to go to school. That was it.
Yep.
You know,
literally, I had this conversation with Puff one time. She was like, I wouldn't be friends with you if we didn't know each other for so long. Like, not in a bad way, but like, what do I have in common with Puff?
Right.
Like,
complete opposite worlds.
Totally. But like, we still talk on Snapchat all the time. Like, I haven't talked to her in years, except we know we keep up in some ways. But really, like, I mean, I have friends here, like, just because I'm with them. You know, if I move away, am I going to keep those friends like I did from growing up from, you know, kindergarten? Probably not. But like Melanie, Emily, Puff, you know, Lee, Lindsay, all those people I still talk to all the time.
Right.
And I think I mean, boy or girl, I think that it's the core people that you grow up with. Just like the music that you like. You know, you like the music you listened to when you were a teenager.
For sure.
And it's always going to be the best no matter what.
Mhm.
You know?
No, I mean, I agree. I just think it was fascinating to like observe that. And I'm like, I wonder if it's not a men and women thing, or if it's just like how we're being brought up now. If you got to make new friends every 2 or 3 fucking years, you're like, fuck this. Why do I want to waste my time?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense.
All right.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about your dad. So obviously you hold him in high regard. Tell me some of the things that like you specifically remember, like him instilling in you that you hope you instill in your son. Like, because he made an impact on you because you brought him up like 5 times already.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't do that when they're on a podcast, right? So yeah, it's good. I mean, it makes me happy because it's to have somebody who's like, look, I learned these things from my dad that I want to push on to other generations. I mean, that's what this is all about.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things is, like I'd said before, like the emotional control. Like I just, I mean, I wouldn't say that I actually like took that trait on super hard, because sometimes I do, I let my emotions get the best of me, especially like throughout managing a band over the last 10 years. I really get, stressed out sometimes, or let the emotions take over and kind of say things that I probably wouldn't want to say. Looking back at it, you're like, I could have handled that a little better. But that's one thing, like just that, hopefully I can instill that into my son. And hopefully, like, it's obviously something I'm constantly like working on and conscious about, is being, better with my emotions, not acting out of emotion, but acting out of the reality of what's going on, and letting, taking those 5 minutes to let the emotion come in and out of you, feel it, and then address it once you've like relaxed. And I know over the last couple of years I've had some interesting relationships dissolve, and it's been highly frustrating. But I just chose not to act on the retaliation or like the response team to any of that until I was ready. And I'd let my emotions settle, and those conversations, when they finally came about, were so much smoother. And a story I always tell people about my dad is, when we were in school, all in school, you could miss 24, 25 days a year of school. My dad would make sure we missed all of them. So you wouldn't get held back, right? And he would just come pick us up from school or let us stay out and take us on these insane adventures, and a lot of the times part of that adventure was going and seeing our family members who, like, we had a cousin who had Down syndrome. We'd always go pick him up. He lived down the street, and we'd take him everywhere with us. And he was like the flag guy at the high school football games. We'd always take him to the games. Or we had like elderly aunts and uncles that were in nursing homes, or people that had worked for him in the past or worked for his dad. Because my dad's a 2nd-generation hairdresser, and I was the 3rd. Now my brother cuts hair at the same salon. But he just had a good network of people. And one thing I didn't realize as a kid is how much time he sacrificed to go visit them and to take us and like share those moments with them. And it's something that, when he passed away and I started, thinking more about it, and as I just had a kid, realizing how valuable time is. Like, you don't have any time, right? And like looking back on my dad, at how amazing he was for his community of people. Like, he cared more about people than money, like, and he totally showed that and carried that so strongly. And along with, like I said, I mean, just such a realist. Like, if we ever had a question, you could ask him. Like, he didn't make you feel like dumb or anything. He just was like there for us, and again, such a big, I'm the oldest of 5 kids. So it's a lot more than 1 kid or 2 kids. 5 kids is, I take that for granted too. Like, thinking about like, how did y'all do this? Like, driving around a Suburban with 5 chatterboxes in the back, fighting, yelling, laughing, screaming. It's just funny.
Complete chaos the whole time. But I don't know how. I don't think I could handle 5 kids. I mean, one's a tornado already.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
totally.
it's wild.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I think it's interesting about like the emotional control, because that's like, I hear you bring that up too, and it's super important. And that's one of the things I teach Sloan now all the time. And I have realized, and you'll come to realize the older your son gets, that he's a complete reflection of you in every aspect. So your emotional range is going to determine his emotional range. And when he pushes, he's going to push, and he's going to find out like where dad's breaking point is. Like my daughter in essence tries to do that. Right. And we had this like, she does it a lot. She pushes and pushes and pushes, which I love, because I don't want her to become just subservient because dad said so. Like it's this fine line I'm trying to navigate right now. This, like, she's 6.5, and I'm like, I don't love the idea that she's going to become just subservient to like the teacher telling her to do this, or like us being like, hey, can I go to the bathroom at school and like listen to these things and do all these rules and not challenge or question any of the things. So I try and challenge her. Is he up?
Yeah, he's now our viewing party.
He can come in. He can come hang out.
He's hanging in the crib, just probably gonna go to sleep in his little playpen. Yeah, I mean,
but I want her to push those things, but then she pushes them with me, and I'm like, yeah, but everybody else but me, God damn it. Like, you know, but so it's that finding that fine line right now of like how much I can let her push those boundaries, because I want her to do those to develop into a strong woman, while also not creating a tornado effect in the house when she doesn't get her way. And there was like this complete breakdown last 2 nights ago, and I had her, and I was like, okay, I got to a point where I'm like, I don't know what to do anymore. Like, she has all of my willpower. She has all of my fuck you-ness. She has all of the dug in-ness. And I'm like, this sucks. And I'm like, all right, I'm at my breaking point. I don't know what to do. So I turned all the lights off, left some night lights on, and just got in bed and just put my hands on my chest. And I was like, I'm just going to lay here and breathe until this situation gets handled. And I just laid in bed and breathed for like 15 minutes while she just threw her complete tantrum. And then she got changed and got in bed and curled up beside me, and we passed through it. But it was like, it wasn't until I brought the second I brought my energy down, boom, everything changed. And I was like, okay, I get to expand more so that I can handle more of this while also encouraging that. It's a tricky situation. You'll see.
Yeah, it's totally. And that's why I say, like, when I said, like, we're still children, like, we really are, like, not in the sense of our age or our development, but like our mental capacity is like always evolving in life. Like, your physical prime may be dwindling after you hit a certain point, but your mental is just constantly getting better and better until you reach that stage of dementia or whatever, you know, comes at a later elderly age in life. But I think the biggest thing I've noticed is, like I said, I was such a spoiled person and being so selfish and to do whatever I want. And it's been such a self-building process. Like, with having a kid, it's almost going to teach you more than you've ever been taught. And that was one thing. My patience, terrible. You know, I had to, you know, round all these things back out. And it's like, if it wasn't for him, it just keeps spiraling. It just keeps going. You keep becoming more selfish. You keep less patient, you know. And
I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'll save you all the money in the world on personal development books. Have a kid. He's going to find all the things you aren't good at, all the stuff with patience and everything, and he's going to poke it and poke it and poke it, and then you're going to get the change. Or you don't, but hopefully you do.
I mean, you know, that's the thing, you know, being conscious about it and like wanting to work on it, you know, it's all a choice.
I think that's our generation, though. Like, so I remember distinctly giving my dad, I started reading when I moved to Charlotte. I started reading. And something magical about the city. And so I started reading, and I read this little book. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like John Maxwell, and it was like something about like improving your life and being able to like do better at business or whatever. And I read it, and I was like, oh my God. And I immediately thought of my dad. And I was like, oh, I want to give this to him. Like, he could do so much better, right? And I gave it to him, and I was like, hey, I think you'd like this. And it was like 100 pages. And he was like, I'm good where I'm at. I don't need to read that or whatever. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean you're good where you're at? And I think that's our generation is like, no, I'm not good where I'm at. I want to go the next step. I want to go the next mile and figure out what those things are in parenting. And one of the funny stories I told, so I went back he retired and I went back, and Dusty and Lee came over and Caleb was over, and I got to see everybody. And so at his retirement party, and we were outside talking, and Lee and, they were talking about raising their kids and all these things and how they're doing it different and all this stuff, and how the grandparents take it personal, but it's not personal. Like, it's just, we're just doing things different. Like we talked about earlier, and how we do that. And I was like, one of the perfect examples is Sloan loves, she's hilarious. She loves to go for the joke. She loves to prank people. She loves all those things. So she's at horse camp, and she just told me the other day, the horse went to the bathroom and she was hosing the horse. Well, she sprayed the poop and made it look like diarrhea, and then told them that the horse had diarrhea. And I'm like, that's so funny, because the horse is probably a $300,000 horse. So someone's freaking out that the horse had diarrhea. And I'm like, this is so awesome. But she tries jokes out, right? So I was she was doing this joke with me, and at this point, I don't remember what it was, but I'm telling the whole story. And the joke ended with her spitting in my face, right?
It's oh,
and it was
they got me.
so I had to explain to her how proud. And so I was telling Lee this. I'm like, this is coming for you guys if you're going to parent the way I do. Imagine if we spit in our parents' face, even if we were trying, in essence, she's trying new material, like a stand-up comedian, right? And I was like, whoa, okay, I see where you were going with that joke. And it landed. But I don't know if you want to tell your friends that joke, and here's why. I had to explain to her, we can't really end jokes with spitting in people's faces, even though it was hilarious. But Lee was it just shows the different level of parenting that we're doing now, as opposed to back then when we were growing up, and how the evolution of that, because it would have been some kids would have just gotten backhanded, or they gotten yelled at, or they would have gotten scolded or whatever, instead of being listen, I want you to keep trying. Keep trying material. Keep going for the joke. It's fucking awesome. And this is how you figure it out. And I teach her that all the time with you mentioned earlier about some stuff, but how, failure is the only way to get where we want to go. And so we have to normalize that. And that's where as a parent, it's just a series of one fuck up after another. And you can't blame your parents for all of the things. And that's one of my, one of the things I started talking about more lately too, is everybody wants to do all this inner child work. And so they do all this inner child work, and then they get all pissy at their parents. And it's hold on, you don't get to be pissy at your parent because they did the best they could. You can go in it in a neutral stance and just be all right, they did the best they could. I didn't like how this was done. And then moving on from there, or else you put so much pressure on yourself that you're never going to be a good parent. Mm-hmm. And then teaching them, one of my favorite, not my favorite things to do with Sloan, but after I fuck up is being hey, oops, that wasn't how I wanted to do things. Let's try that all over again, because then she gets to normalize correcting your mistakes.
Right. Whereas most people just they're just they're so prideful that they don't want to admit their mistakes, It's it's just, and it's the same thing with parenting. Whenever you ask another parent how's things going, they're just things are great, they just always want to say things are great, and they're not. It's fine if they're not great, but you just have to come to terms with it's hard. Yep. This is maybe the hardest thing you'll ever do, but at the same time, I've always believed that anything easy in the world really isn't worth having. Everything that you work for is so much better, so much more fulfilling. And so, having a kid is that way. You're just gonna learn so much about yourself. You're gonna help them learn too. You're literally, like you said, they're studying you.
Everything.
And yeah,
it's crazy. It's creepy almost. When you
right.
Yeah,
the subtle things you start noticing, and you're oh man, you really are paying attention. You really are locked in.
And it's interesting too, because you think they're not paying attention sometimes. You think all right, it's falling on deaf ears, or I'm doing this, or I'm saying that, and her and I will work on phrases. We'll work on the opportunity is. We'll work on the fact that a big one for me is that I get to, not I need to or I have to. It's I get to, or you made us someone in her life at some point told her I can't help myself, And I don't know what it was, like, but it was like towards like eating ice cream. Like, oh, I just can't help myself. And I'm like, oh, hell no, we're not keeping that pattern at all, right? Like, we're not doing an I can't help myself thing. And so, you know, you making a choice, like you're choosing to do this, right? You made a choice. No matter what it is, you made a choice. And I said something the other day. I can't remember what it was, but it was something like, I can't whatever. And she was like, wait a second, Dad. You made a choice not to do it, not that you can't do it. And I was like, oh my God, I love you right now. Like, yeah. But I'm like, son of a bitch, but she catches me all the time. And it was out of nowhere. Like when you think they're not actually listening and then, oh, that's the other one. So I tell her all the time, fear's not going away. Like there's books written about it. Like you're going to experience it. It is what it is. It's never going to go away. So I tell her every time she feels afraid of something, I'm like, baby girl, we get the opportunity to feel the fear and fucking do it anyways. That's what we get to do. And I tell it to her over and over and over again. And I hear I know, Dad. And I'm like, this is my job. This is my job, is to prepare you for the world. And I'm going to keep hammering it in. And we were doing something and someone said something about like being afraid. And she was like, just feel the fear and do it anyways. And I'm like, yes. Like all of the fighting of like, I don't want you to tell me that, all that stuff, it fucking sank in. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about, you know, like, they pay attention to everything you say, how you say it, all of your mannerisms. Like, and that's why it's super important. And we got about 10 minutes. So Kasey, I want to talk about for you, what is it like? Because this is interesting. So you're supporting a man who's paving his own way in the music industry and can be gone for long extended periods of time or up late at night or doing all of these things, also while having your own career, but also realizing like, hey, I want to grow a garden and raise a child. So it's like you're taking all of the aspects that every man wants the strong, stable woman that can support him, right? Like it feels like home, that doesn't stress him out, and, you know, all of those things, and supporting him. You're also taking on the role of the mother, caretaker, and nurturer, and all of those. And you're like, yeah, I can be a badass bitch at the same time and work. So like, talk about that for the next few minutes before we have to get off.
I don't know. I think in a way, it just seems like a natural thing to do. Like I can handle all of this as long as I have a plan. Like I'm like a goal setter. So as long as I like plan things out. And I never really wanted kids. I never wanted to get married or anything like that until I met Fred. And it was like, I think week 2 of dating, he's like, yo, I want kids. Okay, he didn't say yo. Like that's a tough. What up? I want kids.
Just in a text message, like 6 a.m, yo, what up?
And, you know, and I was like, oh, dang, like, maybe just practice making them. Like, I don't know about that yet. But then, like, he's opened up, like, this whole world that I never wanted or could see myself having. So, in a way, to make a little extra sacrifice to get us going, like, I just don't see an issue with that whatsoever. Because he, like, respects that. He appreciates it. I mean, everything is as 50-50 as we can get, even though it's not always 50-50. You know, it always evens everything out. And I don't know, now that I'm in this situation, I feel like more at home with who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I always want to be like the platform artist, hairstylist, all that thing. And I started to do that. And I was kind of just like, there's not this pull that I think I should be feeling. I still did a great job at it. I'm proud of myself for doing that. Like the leader that I became, I got a lot out of that. And I think now I'm like, I had to go through that stage to now have V and support Fred and like, I don't know, make wherever we are a home with everything that's going on.
Do you think it shifted after you guys had a baby, or did you feel it shifting before? Like you're like, you know what, I think I actually want to settle more into this. Like it feels right.
It definitely was just like a feeling, but now it's like, I know it. Like I know exactly what I'm feeling now. And definitely was something coming on, but now it's like full force.
Do you plan to continue to always work, or do you think you want to transition into full-time?
I would love to do full-time mom, do all of that, help Fred out as much as I can, because long-term goals is, you know, when he's touring, we're able to pick up and leave and do tour stuff going on with like homeschooling, trying to figure that out, how to make it as, you know, successful for everyone. You know, I don't want anyone to hate anything that we're doing. So, you know, figuring out a plan. And that's what like this stage is just all the planning and trying to figure that out.
Yeah. I think it's awesome. I mean, to have that support, Fred, and be like, you know, you can go create and we can do that. Cause there's a lot of people who'd be like, all right, you go tour, we're staying here, you know, and like not want to be on the ride or just want the financial outcome of what's coming with it instead of be like, cause I think that would be my biggest fear. And I think it held me back a lot because I'm going to make this podcast about me. I think it held me back a lot at first when Sloan was born because I was terrified to miss out on a lot of things. Like I was terrified that I wouldn't have stuff, and I was terrified like I can't go create this. I can't work 12 hours a day because then like I'm going to miss out on this or that and it pulled a lot of me all the time, and I was like, fuck, man, this stress sucks. Like, which made me not want to have more kids at that time. Because I was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to balance this. I don't know how to create and be a dad and do this and all of these other things. And there's no manual for this at all.
All that information out there, there's still not a tell-all.
Yeah, there's not, because everybody's so unique and it's so different. And I mean, totally, like, and to speak on that, like feeling the stress of missing out, you know, like I've told Kasey all year, I was like, I just feel like such FOMO because like I'm not out here touring like a lot of the people that are my friends that are doing really well, or you know, we are touring, but it's like at the minimal right now with the kid, and that's a blessing and a curse in a way in my head because it's like I'm getting all this time with my son, I'm getting like, you know, just the most magical things here at home, but I'm also like, man, I feel like I'm doing a disjustice to my business.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely not doing the disjustice to my family. And it always leaves me feeling like I'm missing out. And, you know, I've definitely, in recognizing those feelings, it's like just trying to change that thought process, like work on that thought process and think like, look, like you have it made. And because my friends are out touring all the time, they always are saying, man, like, man, what you're doing is really cool. Like you get to do that amount of shows, you're getting paid that much, and then you're getting all this time at home, you know, like that's really cool. Doesn't seem as stressful as what we're doing right now, touring full time and like constantly on the road. And that's what I told Kasey too. It's like, it's hard to like want to be like in a touring band full time without your family being there and without the rest of the band's family being there and everybody kind of coming into the logical thinking of this is a lifestyle. This isn't just like a thing, like, you know, community. Yeah, it's your community. Because like I tell people, it's like, you know, music's not the most lucrative until it is, right? And part of the thing, I guess part of the things that people they take for granted is the travel, like, you know, is being out there and living on the road and getting to like, you know, take those couple extra hours to see something you've never seen because you're an hour away from it, you know, rather than having to make a, you know, can we afford to do a $2,000 trip to the Grand Canyon? Well, we're driving past it 4 times this year. Like, let's just etch out the time. Like, and it's being like living the lifestyle rather than being caught up in the monetary value of things, you know, and like, well, will I make this much money? Or will I make this? It's like, well, you know, if you spent 40 years traveling around the world, seeing everything.
Who cares how you did it?
Yeah, but you only made 30 to 40 grand each year, but you're alive. You didn't starve. It's like, what's wrong with that?
And you did it with the people you love the most.
Yeah. It's like, it doesn't matter about the money. And I think that's another thing too, for like looking into the music business and like trying to figure out what it is. Someone like mentioned this to me, is that like what did they, oh man, I'm not going to be able to explain it right. But basically like a game like basketball or something has like there's a winner, a clear winner at the end of the game. And there's a clear winner at the end of the season. Whereas like music's not like that. You just don't just win, you know, it's an infinity game.
Infinite player.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
You're what?
And so
it's either you're a player or like an infinite player. Like, are you just playing the round to get it done with? Or are you playing that you played in 30 years from now?
Play it forever.
Yeah, and that's parenthood too. I mean, that's a perfect analogy. Like, do you want your kids? And, I didn't hear it. What'd you say?
I said, just go be a babysitter, or
right?
You can have a.
I mean, but there's one, you know, I'm friends with this guy. He's dad's don't babysits his Instagram, you know, I mean, and it's all about that. Like, this is not what you do. You're in this for the long haul. Like, and that's why it's so fucking exhausting, because it's a goddamn marathon, which is why I think just thinking about this now, I think entrepreneurs probably tend to be better parents because they know what it's fucking like to just go and grind and go and grind. And it's like, that's what parenthood is. And if you look back, look, I think money's massively important. I refuse to say that I think money's not important because I don't want to put it out there to the universe, because if you said that Kasey wasn't important, she wouldn't want to hang around you very much. And I want money to hang around me all the fucking time, you know, like, but if you look back and like you're dying, it's like, all right, well, what do I want? I want to look and I want to be like, man, Sloan was a well-adjusted, awesome fucking human being. End of sentence. That's it. And if that happened, fuck the rest. You know, like, and I think that that's the most important thing we get to give, because that's what the next generation continues to have. And I don't agree with all the things that are happening in the world right now. And I do believe that you distill it back down to the lack of fucking family and the lack of fathers being present in the home. Because when you have a present father, dumb shit doesn't fucking happen. Even with women, it's like the statistics are insane. What happens when the father's not present in a daughter's life, let alone a son. Like no one, I see kids all the time. No one even teaches them now, walk on the side of fucking traffic. Like when you're walking down the street, like basic human nature things that you're supposed to do aren't being taught, and it's not okay. And the only people that can do that are the fathers. And like that's, you know, and oh my goodness, I can go on and on about this. But then there's that the pedophile thing that was just, they interviewed that pedophile and asked him what's the number one thing he looked for. He looked for children with no parent, no father. So a girl or boy that had no present father. And then if they did have a present father, was he weak? So it is your obligation to make yourself a bad motherfucker to protect your children.
Yeah.
You know, and anyways, I feel the weight of the world. Like what'd you say?
So I'm a bad motherfucker.
He's a bad motherfucker.
That's the title of the next song. But
I just girl over here.
I get the weight of the world on your shoulders because you want to do it all. Like your mind's always constantly like, all right, we want financial freedom, you know, but I want to be at home, but I want to create because I'm an artist, and that's what it is. And then I also, you know, I have to sleep at some point. You know, and then it doesn't matter what you do. I think that's part of what I'm getting to the conclusion of now is that I can either choose to feel guilty for what I didn't get done, or I can just accept it and move on. You know, because at some point throughout the day, something's not getting done. And I kind of figured that when I went home. And real quick, I'll just tell this story and then we'll hop off. But my dad retired, and he's a completely different fucking person now. Like nothing matters. Everything's just like, oh, I love whenever I know that something happens, but your head snap around the other way. It's awesome. So he's completely different. He's super calm now. Like nothing bothers him. Like his flight was canceled. He's like, no big deal. Flight's canceled. I'll get home when I get home. And like all these like calm things where we weren't rushing, we weren't stressing. Like nothing fucking mattered when he was here. I was like, who are you and what'd you do with my dad? And then I started to realize like, okay, one, why don't I start living more like that now? And then two, I wish that was the guy that raised me. And I was like, okay, if I wish that was the guy that raised me and he did a great job, why don't I just be that now for Sloan? And everything shifted after that when I realized it. And I was like, you know what? If I don't answer the email, if I don't answer whatever, it's fine because this matters. Being that person for her now, not when she's 35, that's what matters.
Yeah, that's the big part of it is, again, going back to that, like if you're an infinite player, like you're in this for the long haul, like, and for my example is music, you know, I had said years ago, I was like, I will do this till the day I die. So then it's like, well, what's the rush to keep getting wins all the time? What's the rush if you're going to be doing this in 20 years, no matter what? And I told somebody the other day, I was like, you know, playing a brewery, I'm like, if it comes down to it, that this is what I'm doing in 20 years, still playing the brewery, it's like, it's still a pretty awesome job to have.
Yeah.
3 hours a day, make X amount of dollars that covers my family and stuff. So it's just, but it's weird graduating out of that mindset of like, I need a win. I'm focused on the win so much that I don't even realize when I'm winning, you know? And it's because, like I said, you got to get out of that mindset. And like, you know, in a way, your dad's work life is just another kid for him, right? It's just another baby that he had to like take care of. It was a responsibility. And so when that responsibility is like relinquished, you know, things are, you know, it's just like, man, I'm on cruise control now, because he's like, I'm just going to do this until the end. And it's like, the sooner you can trick your mind into that is that I'm going to have to, you know, you're going to be working hard your whole life. You're going to be doing you're going to work hard towards the things you want to, you know, in your life. And so like, you're going to do it forever until you die. So you might as well not get caught up in being so rushed to make the things happen.
All right. So yes. Is there anything you want to tell dads? Any words of encouragement? Anything? I mean, I know you're still new to the game, but we know it's hard. So anything you want to share?
I would say for those that aren't dads, like it's easier than you think, but it's not easy. It is hard, but it's not going to be like, you know, something you can't get through. You know, I think I've learned that. And I was very excited to be a dad, and those that are dads, obviously, like, yeah, you know, like hang in there if you're struggling, just because I feel like it's always getting better. You know, I myself am getting better. My kid's getting better. Our relationship is getting better on how we understand each other. Because again, going back to that, you know, it's like it's a human. He has his own emotion, his own brain, his own feeling. Like he's going to be coming into learning how to use that, and so do I. And so we're two separate people, but we have like an unbreakable bond because it's my blood, you know, and my son. So, but yeah, I mean, for all the dads out there and the dads to be, you know, it's going to be the best thing that's ever happened to you going through your journey as a dad or becoming a dad, I would say. So
I agree with that. And I tell everybody, like, those first three, for me, the first 3 years were by far the hardest, because it was like, I don't know how to really communicate with this thing. Right. You know, but then like once she hit 3, it was game fucking on. Like, the fun never ends now. Like, it's non-stop. So it's, you know, you can do it, you can get through it, you know. And I think a lot of times those first 3 years, really mom plays a pivotal role too, because of a lot of that unconscious communication. But I can't wait for him to hit like 3, and it's just like, dude, it's go time.
yeah, oh yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited for those moments to like have conversations and like, you know, just see who he is really, you know.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I mean, the first 3 years it is interesting, and the mom plays such a huge role, and I guess like primordially, like the mom forever and ever has played that role, whereas dad's like, you know, hunting, you know,
Sure.
providing survival and safety. You know, mom's taking care of the baby, and then about that point, 3, 4 years old, the kid just starts to tag along, following dad, seeing what dad's doing, you know. So you really develop like and I mean, I guess being the oldest of 5 kids, like I kind of got to see my dad go through it with my other brothers, because my youngest brother is 8 years apart from me. So like being able to see that kind of happening from like 8 to 10 and kind of remembering those memories, you know, really crazy.
Yeah.
You know, like exactly like watching them kind of come into their own and like become obsessed with our dad, because he was like so interactive with us and always involved. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So we'll wrap it up now. Tell everybody where they can come see you live, where they can download your music, where they can support you.
yeah, so we're doing a tour coming up this fall. We're going to be traveling all over the United States. I think we're doing about 10 separate shows through the months of September and October. And we'll have some hometown shows here in Charlotte where we're based. You can find the music at latenightspecial.net or latenightspecial.rocks. We're in the process of kind of transitioning websites. So one of those two will link you to exactly where you need to be. You'll find all our social medias, which most of them are Late Night Special Music. That's our handle. And, you know, we're on YouTube, we're on all the streaming sources, and it's pretty easy. Just type in Late Night Special Band on Google and you'll find us somewhere.
Beautiful.
And you can kind of check out the music, see what we're doing. And that whole web links you to my personal pages, and as well as the whole band and kind of the story and all that good stuff.
Love it. We'll tag everything in the description too, man. Well, I can't thank you enough for getting on here, man. I can't wait to watch your journey. This is going to be awesome, and watch you guys grow and everything. We'll get you back on too. We'll make it like an occurrence every album release, man. You got to get on.
Let's do it. Let's do it. It was a pleasure, man. It went by like felt like 20 minutes. It's not an hour, but it was great.
Yeah. Awesome, man. All right. Thank you so much.